All right, good morning, everyone. We are starting our third session of Public Health 101. And can you not hear me? You can hear me? Okay, sorry, I saw someone put in the chat. Okay, we're good. We are going to be hearing from the team from the Center of Medical Services, Medical Emergency. Sorry. Man.
It's emergency medical services.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. I apologize. I got distracted by the chat. All right. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves and take it away, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'll start. Good morning. My name is Jason Rhodes, Chief of the Center for Emergency Medical Services. I've been at the Department of Health in this role for coming up on 12 years. And I'll pass it to Carolina.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carolina Roberts-Santan. I'm the Deputy Chief of Emergency Medical Services, and I oversee programs, and I've been at the Center for EMS for 9 years. I'm going to pass it over to Anna.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Civitaris. I am the center epidemiologist, and I'm also the evaluator on one of our grants that pertains to first responders and opioid response. And I have been in the center since September, but I've been at the Department of Health for 5 years. And I will pass it over to Michelle. All right, Michelle's having audio issues. I'm not sure why. I think she's logging off and logging back on. So Connie, why don't you go ahead?
Yep. My name is Connie Ball. I have been at the Center for EMS since December. I am the data manager and the MIH Program coordinator. That's Mobile Integrated Healthcare. And yeah, it's been great to be here. So I will pass it off to Darren.
Hello, everyone. My name is Darren Denai. I'm a public health associate working with the Center for EMS on their EMS program. So, who else should I pack back to Carolina, or has everyone gone? Or
Right, Caroline, I think we're all set if you want to put up the PowerPoint.
Chief, can you see them?
I can, yes.
All right.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Again, we are the Rhode Island Department of Health Center for Emergency Medical Services. And I'm just going to emphasize that we are the Center for Emergency Medical Services because sometimes people, we found in the past, we've been called a variety of things, including emergency management services and some other things. So we are the Center for EMS, Center for Emergency Medical Services. So if you think about ambulances and ambulance services and rescue vehicles and EMTs and paramedics, that's who our primary audience is. So, okay. So moving on to the next slide, you'll see that we have, this is our crew. Years ago, there was 3 or 4 of us in the office, and we've expanded and grown the group here, which obviously has been very valuable not only to the center but to the department and to the general public as we've been able to expand programs and services. It has been extremely fruitful, and we'll see that later on in the presentation today. But that's a quick visual of our group, as I said. So you've met some of us already. You can go to the next one, Carolina. That's fine. So these are some of our staff. So it's pretty awesome that we have to have 2 slides now to describe all of our staff and list them. We've met some folks here today, but you can see we have a wide variety of different functions throughout the office, where we have both. We're a regulatory body. However, we also have some, as Carolina mentioned, some programmatic work as well that has been very helpful. Again, not only to the internal staff but to our external partners. Okay, Within the Department of Health, this is just a quick peek at the RIDO organizational chart. We rest within the Division of Preparedness, Response, Infectious Disease, and Emergency Medical Services, which is one of the 6 divisions here in the Department of Health, along with our partners within this division. We can actually add a 5th center to this division. The COVID response unit has been scaled down a bit and moved into this into the division of Pridums, as it's known, and as it will be the 5th center. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are a regulatory authority, and this is where we get that authority from. So to have regulatory authority first, obviously we need to have statutory authority. So our enabling statute is Rhode Island General Law 23-4.1, entitled Emergency Medical Transportation Services, and there are several subchapters within this. There are various other statutes in which we are mentioned from time to time, so we have to be cognizant of those. But again, 23-4.1 is our primary enabling statute. From that statute, we are able to codify regulations, and with the fairly recent restructure of the Rhode Island Code of Regulations, we are 2016-RICR, which is the Rhode Island Code of Regulations, 20-10-2. And again, all of these are readily available online at the Secretary of State website for regulations and the Rhode Island General Assembly website for the statutes. And as you can see, we both of those are linked, and you can take a look at those. Okay, so some of the roles that again that come underneath our enabling statute. One is Chapter 4, describing the minimum standards that we shall set. Again, guided by the director, and we're going to meet those in the areas that you see on the screen. Licensing vehicles or ambulances, the equipment that needs to be carried on those vehicles, the personnel and their certification and licensing levels, training and education, not only initial training but continuing education for the EMTs, or as we call the group. We have 5 different levels of licensure. So collectively, we call them EMS practitioners. Communications between agencies, between individuals, between from EMS to the hospitals, extremely important. Cooperation with other units, or what's also known as mutual aid. And lastly, treatment, but certainly not least, treatment of acutely ill or injured persons, which there's a document that flows out of that we call the Rhode Island statewide EMS protocols, which are a set of standing orders and protocols to guide EMTs in the field to help make them quick decisions and provide rapid care without having to communicate with the hospital to get a verbal order from a physician. Okay, so under licensing, I'm going to break this down a little bit for you. Under licensing, we have 5 different levels of practitioners, as I mentioned, and starting off with the emergency medical responder, moving up to the emergency medical technician, then the advanced EMT, and this is kind of a Rhode Island specific level of certification and licensure, and that's the advanced EMT cardiac. And then finally, the highest level of EMS practitioner is the paramedic. We also license ambulances. We license what you would traditionally know as a transporting ambulance, as we see on the screen here today. But we also license non-transporting ambulances, which may be like an SUV or a fire engine or another type of vehicle, but they're still required to carry specific set of equipment and medication. And then we also license the vehicles. They can be licensed at the level of advanced life support, which would bring on the concept of cardiac monitoring, IV insertion, more advanced medications versus basic life support, which has fewer medications but can perform very much life-saving interventions. And then finally, we also license the ambulance service itself, also done at the basic life support level, the advanced life support level, or at the emergency medical responder tier. So that decision is made by the applicant or the community as to what level they are going to respond and what they feel is best for their individual needs. Now, the majority of our 39 municipalities have an advanced life support service operating within their borders, with the exception of New Shoreham. They have a basic life support service on the island. Okay, so we also publish some manuals and provide guidance as to where to find information. So we delineate what equipment needs to be carried on vehicles, again, based upon whether it's an ALS vehicle or a basic life support vehicle. And we always try to follow national standards and use them as a backbone and a guide. So there is a national consensus as far as what equipment should be carried on an ambulance. We also handle education models, and as I mentioned, not only initial education, where we use the National EMS Education Standards, which is put out by the United States Department of Transportation, Office of EMS, and also continuing education. So EMTs need to, and all EMS practitioners need to regularly in a cycle, whether it's a 2 or 3 year cycle, renew their licenses in the National Registry of EMT certification. And to do that, they take continuing education, which we help define and provide a training, a learning management system platform here at the Department of Health to assist them with that. We also investigate and resolve any complaints, which usually come from either the general public, a hospital, a physician, or we may investigate a person if they've had some criminal activity that may affect their work production. Okay, as I mentioned about the Rhode Island statewide EMS protocols, these are also a publicly available document. It's over a 300-page document, and it addresses a wide variety of potential kind of 3 big buckets of types of response. One being trauma, motor vehicle crashes, falls, and the like. So trauma is one big bucket. Second being medical related emergencies, cardiac arrest, chest pain, breathing difficulty, abdominal issues, and then the third being behavioral and mental health, which we're learning about very rapidly as we've seen an increase in the number of calls related to behavioral health type incidents. Okay, so we also manage the Rhode Island EMS Information System. This is our vendor. It's called Image Trend Elite, and this is a very exciting program within our center. We're coming up on 10 years of managing this digitally, as opposed to having paper-based bubble sheets to provide patient care records. So this has been a big project. We have an excellent team here today, so they're going to talk more about the data system. Okay, so this is just a quick graphic demonstrating what we do with our data. So our job is not just to collect data, but we also want to share and be good partners. So we send, I'm going to highlight a couple of these things, these logos here that you see. One is the NEMSIS data you see in the upper left-hand corner, which is the National EMS Information System. So the National EMS Information System is also a data repository of select data elements used mostly for research purposes, but all 50 states and the District of Columbia and 3 territories are all submitting data into NEMSIS, which provides a very rich repository, again, for research purposes. The second I will highlight is biospatial in the center of the page. Biospatial is a data analytics company with which we engage, and they provide us some very, very excellent tools back in order to analyze the data that we collect in a very digestible format. They continue to expand and grow, and even this week have put out a couple of excellent, very exciting new products that I think will be very helpful to our office. And finally, I'll highlight Current Care. Current Care is our state's health information exchange, where we are now uploading data to patient care records, their overall electronic medical record, so that generally their primary care physicians are able to take a look at the EMS data in order to help make a better determination about care that their patients are receiving and some incidents that have been occurring. So all three of those things are automatic updates. We don't have to, rely on any staff time to push a button to get data to move. So it's a very robust and advanced system at this point in time. So it has been very, very fruitful. And as I said, we also have many internal partners as well with other centers within the department. You can see on the screen there as well. All right, so just some quick data that we had pulled. Just interesting note. This is a curve looking at COVID-19 data from 2020 to 2021, beginning of 2022, and you can kind of see the various spikes that we all knew about and read about. But what was very interesting to me, and I'm sure the rest of the team, is that our EMS data pretty much coincided with the hospital data as far as increase in COVID cases as different variants became prevalent in the community. And this is a look at some other syndromes. We could put many syndromes on the screen, but I just wanted to have the opportunity that it's readable. But you can see the line at the top, that kind of olive green line at the top, is behavioral health related calls. It has consistently been that top line for the last 5 years, and as has the black line below it consistently been the number 2 syndrome, which is falls from a ground level. So we see that those two have been consistently the top 2. You can see that kind of magenta curve, which is the COVID curve we just saw, and you can see the effect it had on the EMS system over that time. The blue line we see is respiratory illness, and then the pinkish line that kind of intertwines with the respiratory curve is alcohol-related calls as well. So it's a fascinating world to see what our EMS practitioners are dealing with on a routine basis. And again, this kind of helps us shape and guide what kind of continuing education we need to provide, what kind of programs we need to try to address, where we need to put some effort, obviously, into mental health, but also into falls prevention as important topic areas to try to assist the public's health. All right, and lastly, some other external partners that we have there. We are a member of the National Association of State EMS Officials, and actually several of us just got back from their annual meeting, which is a excellent opportunity to meet and work together with other states and to learn and grow our partnerships with them. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Office of EMS, which is a division of the U.S. Department of Transportation. They are very heavily involved in writing the curricula and standards for the national EMS training guidelines and education. The National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians is the nation's premier and only certification body for all levels of EMS practitioners. And Again, internally within the state, we have the Rhode Island Ambulance Service Coordinating Advisory Board, which is a statutorily created board, 25 members from various organizations, all 5 counties that meet on a quarterly basis that help to provide advice to the Center for EMS and the Director of Health. We also assist with the Heart Safe Community Program within the department, working with the Heart Disease and Stroke Prevention Center. So that's a very important collaboration for us, because EMS needs help, right? They always need help. They need people in the community to perform chest compressions, use an AED prior to the arrival of the ambulance, because it takes some minutes to get on scene. So pre-arrival care provided before the arrival of EMS is extremely important. So that's a relationship we enjoy. But also across the bottom, you can see the Rhode Island State Firefighters League, the Rhode Island State Association of Firefighters, which is the state firefighter union, the Rhode Island Association of Fire Chiefs, the Rhode Island Medical Society, the Committee on Trauma of the American College of Surgeons, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American College of Emergency Physicians. Physician involvement is very, very important in EMS, because we need those folks to be able to write those standing orders and protocols and provide good quality continuing improvement at the service level. So a valuable, very valuable partnership there as well. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Connie. So thank you very much, everybody. Enjoyed the chat.
Thanks, Chief. Good morning, everybody. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about data quality and documentation. As I mentioned, I am the EMS Data Manager and the Mobile Integrated Healthcare Program Coordinator. Carolina will talk a little bit about our MIH program later on. So I'm going to focus on the data. Chief Rhodes started to talk about some of the data that we have, that we get those reports from our biospatial tool, and that data really comes from our patient care reporting system, and that is where the EMS providers document their calls when they're out in the field taking on those EMS calls. So NEMSIS, as Chief Rhodes mentioned, is the National Emergency Medical Services Information System. And currently we're updating our RIEMS information system to meet NEMSIS 3.5 national requirements. So NEMSIS is really this universal standard for how that patient care is documented with EMS providers and that care they're providing. So we make sure that we are compliant with the NEMSIS regulations. So it's really important that we're educating providers and agencies on how to document this information. It's important for the validation effort. So with the patient care reporting, we make sure that there's validation in place that kind of triggers the provider to make sure that they enter certain information that we need. So if they're not entering a name or a date of birth, they kind of get a flag in their system to make sure that they're putting in that required information. And it's also really important to educate the providers on the importance of this data, because if they don't know why we need this information or the impact that that data is having, sometimes it doesn't always click for them as to why they need to be filling out, multiple fields of information while they're in an emergency situation. So this education of providers and agencies for data quality is really important for the consistency between agencies. So we have about, and I'm going to get this number wrong, we have about 80 EMS agencies in the state for the 39 cities and towns. So that's a lot of agencies for not a lot of cities and towns. So we really want to make sure that we're having consistency between the agencies and getting as similar data as possible. And we're really trying to improve the documentation completeness and accuracy. This really helps us to understand what is happening in the state. So we really want to be able to get a good good lead on what is happening, how accurate is that data, and if we don't have the accurate data, that's making the reports that you'll see from Anna next, that makes those reports a little bit inaccurate, and it's just coming from the flow of that data. So the more data we have and the more complete that data is, the more accurate our reports will be. So basically what I was just talking about, we need that data to be accurate from the get-go in order to have our reports be as accurate as they can be. So it's really great that we have our EPCR system, the patient care reporting. It's great that we have biospatial. It's great that we have all these connections with others, but if we don't have the correct and complete data from the beginning with our EMS providers, not that it's not useful, but it could be better. And the more data we have, that leads to more funding, that leads to more partnerships, and that leads to more resources for the agencies themselves. So I could talk about that for a while, but I will pass it off to Anna so she can show you what we actually do with that data.
Thanks, Connie. So that was a great introduction, to the value of the data I'm going to talk about here. So in general, so EMS, and this is a big number that I feel like even startled me when I joined, but so EMS responded to more than 250,000 calls last year, to more than 250,000 calls in 1 year, which is crazy to me. But so on the right here of my slide, you can see, a non-exhaustive list of all the different types of calls that EMS can respond to on any given day. For these situations, EMS and EMTs collect data, like Connie said, that explains, who was involved, what the caller or the person who made the call, identified as their reason for calling, what was observed at the scene, when the incident occurred, where it took place, and, kind of the why and how of what happened there, including the situation surrounding the event and then how they responded and kind of what the outcome was at the scene, for all of these things and more than what's listed. I know Chief identified that, falls from ground level, and I wrote mental health crises, but those are two types of very common calls that we do get. Some less common calls like burns and poisonings and drownings, but motor vehicle accidents, very common. Even things like animal bites, alcohol-related incidents, and then kind of just your general abdominal, pelvic pain, vomiting, diarrhea, all that stuff. So EMTs really respond to everything and give them a lot of credit. So this results in a very, very rich data set. And we love to look at that data internally within our center, but we also like using it to help support other programs, within and outside of RIDO. So we have a lot of data available, as I just mentioned. We want to make sure that data is portrayed in a way that makes sense to folks that are within the EMS field, but also non-EMS folks as well. So this is actually just a little screen cap from our annual report, which we put out not too long ago, where we kind of just pulled out a few facts that came out of our data analysis. So, with so much data, we really want to pull out information that can impact policy and also help to target community and interventions and education. So this is just an example. We did like a small data story on motor vehicle crashes, because obviously that's one of the prominent ones that EMTs respond to. And while we do work very closely with the Department of Transportation, we also work to support many other programs within the department, just like Chief had listed on that previous slide. Things like the Injury and Violence Prevention Program, asthma, rural health, the opioid and overdose program, facilities regulations, heart disease, and more. So this is kind of just I just think this was kind of a fun, figure that, kind of pulls out some really interesting data that you can really put into practice. Go to the next one, Carolina. Thank you. So I know there's kind of a lot here, so I will preface it before I ask you to kind of look at the table. But so this is an example of related to falls. So like Chief mentioned, so just an example of kind of how this is like real life application. So according to the World Health Organization, falls are the #2 leading cause of death across the whole globe. So falls in particular from ground level result in increased morbidity, mortality, particularly for the older population, right? We know Rhode Island has a bit of an older population. So often falls necessitate, hospitalization, can lead to further health complications. And ground level falls really continue to be like a major cause of injury for Rhode Islanders. And like Chief said, one of the top calls around the state. In 2021, we had over 10,000, almost 11,000 calls just for slipping, tripping, and falling from the ground level. And so what's cool is we're able to look at things like we can identify which month had the most falls, which was October, and when most falls occurred, which was between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. Also how falls were impacted by COVID, right? Because some people were staying at home, people weren't leaving their houses as much. How did that impact things? And also how different ages and sexes were impacted. Plus, we were able to look at where falls occur, which is actually what you see here in this table. And I know that there's kind of a lot in this table, but kind of to summarize it, we were able to find out that the majority, nearly 2/3 of falls occurred at people's private or, and at a private residence, not out in public or anything like that. Then other common places where people fell were, unsurprisingly, nursing homes, but also outdoor locations, private commercial establishments like stores, shopping places, and then also residential institutions where people were living. And then interestingly, 1/3 of all the falls that happened were in a different location than where the person actually, in a different city than where the person lived. So that's kind of a lot, and I don't necessarily expect you to remember any of that, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that we can really kind of hone in on this data and really get some interesting, stuff out of it. So this could help inform how people do, like Chief had mentioned, falls prevention in the home, but also just get an idea of kind of where things are happening. So EMTs can be prepared, the community can be more prepared, and things of that nature. So this, again, just a small snippet of kind of how we can put our data to work. And yeah, so with that, I will pass it over to, I believe, Carolina is next.
Yes. Thank you, Anna. So that was excellent. That was a great segue into what I'm going to be talking about, which are the EMS programs and that relate to all the things that were talked about by Anna, Connie, and Chief Rhodes. And once again, just like Anna just said, we utilize this data. And as Chief said, we use our regulatory authority to be able to impact our public health response within our communities. And so we have 4 programs. We actually work with more than 4 programs as partners, but these are the 4 programs that are initiated within the Center for EMS and that serve all of our communities. And they essentially touch on all the 10 essential public health services. And as you guys all know, this is Public Health 101. The 10 essential public health services provide a framework for public health to protect and promote the health of all people in all communities. And so our programs touch on all of these, the 10 essential public health services. So I will just mention 1 or 2. One of our programs actually touches on more than 3 or 4 services. All right, going the wrong way. All right, so our first program is the EMS for Children program. This is the we received the Health Resource and Service Administration grant of $130,000 a year. We've had this grant since 2006, so it's been a long-standing grant within the Center for EMS. It has 9 performance measures, and we'll talk about it, but the essential public health service that this program addresses is creating champions and implementing policies, plans, and laws that impact health. And so, again, we have 3 pre-hospital measures. One related to data, as you learned earlier, one of our biggest roles is to do data collection when we respond to EMS calls. And the other 2 are related to ensuring that our EMS agencies are ready to care for pediatric patients. And so pediatric patients are actually low incidence, high acuity. And so in Rhode Island, we only 8 to 10% of our calls are pediatric patients. So we want to make sure always that EMS practitioners have the skills to be able to respond to these calls when they happen. We have 4 hospital measures. One is pediatric hospital readiness, pediatric trauma readiness, interfacility transfer guidelines and interfacility transfer agreements. So in essence, we want to make sure that all hospitals in Rhode Island are ready to care for pediatric patients in the state, and that also they're trauma ready. Some of our hospitals, unfortunately, if a child arrives with trauma, they are not capable of caring for this child. And so also, we are lucky that our state is very small and we can easily transfer to Hasbro Children's Hospital, but sometimes that transfer takes time. So we want to make sure that hospitals have interfacility transfer guidelines and agreements that facilitate the transport so that we do not delay care at any time. And our last program measures are permanence of the program and enactment of the program. So in terms of permanence, we make sure that we have a person in the position of the EMS for Children program, that we have an advisory committee, but also that it's in the statute. And so we currently have the EMS for Children program in our EMS statute and a Department of Health statute, but we're also trying to implement some of these performance measures that I just previously mentioned to make sure that they are all either in regulation or law. The next program is the First Responders Project. This is a SAMHSA, a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration grant. We receive about $800,000 a year. This program actually ends now in September of 2022. We have 5 goals, as you can see here: equip law enforcement, train, refer to treatment service, enhance surveillance, and establish first responders programs. As I mentioned, this program actually addresses many public health services requirements. For instance, assess and monitor population health status. So we make sure that we're assessing, people who are overdosing, strengthening and supporting and mobilizing community through establishing safe stations, by implementing leave behind programs, building and supporting a diverse skilled public health workforce. So we're training EMS practitioners and law enforcement officers to make sure that they understand what public health response looks like, and why we want to care for individuals the way we care for them. And also assuring an effective system that enables equitable access to the individual services and care needed to be healthy. So making sure that we're leaving behind a lock zone, that we're talking to people about reducing stigma. And so all of these programs allow us to be able to implement our public health response via EMS and law enforcement. The next program is the Mental Health Awareness Training Program. The MHAT grant is another SAMHSA program. We receive $125,000 a year for this program. This program has 3 goals. It's mental health training, referral to services, and EMS mental health temperature check. So our goal is to not only look outward to see how our community, as you saw, Chief Rose shared, behavioral health emergencies are the #1 cause that EMS is currently responding to. But we also want to look inward. So how are EMS practitioners doing? How can we help them? How can we support them in their work? And our essential service here is strengthen, support, and mobilize communities and partnerships to improve health. So we're encouraging EMS agencies to partner with their local mental health agencies or statewide mental health agencies. Some communities are looking to implement adopting clinicians within their agencies to be able to support inward. Unfortunately, the behavioral health crisis is affecting everyone. We, in December, had 3 suicides that we know that suicides are preventable. And so we want to make sure that we are educating and training our EMS practitioners so that they don't only do amazing work when they respond, but that they are also able to care for themselves. The last and newest program that we have is the MIH-CP Health Equity Program. This program is something that I forgot to mention is all of our programs, all of our staff touch our programs. So even though we have some leads for some of our programs, everyone is involved in all of the programs in one way or another. And so this is our newest program. Connie Ball is the Mobile Integrated Healthcare Community Paramedicine Coordinator. It's a CDC sub-award, so this is actually held by the Health Equity Institute, and they sub-awarded to us to implement an MIH-CP program. Mobile Integrated Healthcare Community Paramedicine is the provision of healthcare using patient-centered mobile resources in the out-of-hospital environment. So this one is specifically addressing COVID, but we have EMS agencies doing different things, focusing on falls prevention, focusing on opioids, focusing on different initiatives. And essentially, this public health service is assuring an effective system that enables equitable access to the individual services and care needed to be healthy. And so the goals of this program is to reduce hospital readmission, reduce unnecessary transports, and increase warm referral handoff. Referrals to this program can happen via EMS, PCP, or hospital referrals. People can be enrolled in COVID, mental health, substance use falls, and other different programs depending on community needs. When a patient is visited in their home, we look at their vital signs, address their needs, look at their barriers and challenges, so we can help them with community referrals and on-scene treatment in some cases. And then the resolution usually is to be able to help that person access better resources. So we try to follow them within 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months to ensure, for example, if it's a person who enrolled the program into the substance use program, that, you know, they have naloxone, they're not, they haven't overdosed in the past 12 months, and that they are engaged in treatment services or recovery services, have a peer as a partner in their treatment, and make sure that we are supporting them and therefore hopefully reducing, you know, an overdose, so no admission to hospital, reducing the transport to the hospital, and increasing that relationship between that person and our community. One thing that I want to emphasize is that, you know, we sort of all mentioned throughout our conversation, but we have 84, 82, 80, Connie, we'll never get that number right, EMS agencies across the state. And so many of these, even though we do have 39 towns, many of these are ingrained in their community. So when they respond to a call, they know this person, they know who the person is, who their family, who their neighbor is, who their dog is. They have relationships within their communities. And so, and a lot of them actually live in their community. So it's a good relationship to be able to foster through the MIH-CP program, because usually these EMS practitioners know what the needs are and what people are calling for. We have something called repeat callers. Chief Rhodes has a really good story about somebody who would fall every Friday at 3. And so our MIH-CP program allows, if you know that, you know, X person falls every Friday at 3, maybe we go at 2 and knock on the door and say, hey, how's the rug? Can we check your bathroom? To avoid that fall and avoid that unnecessary transport and possible injury. So I did forget to put a question slide. My apologies for that. But I wanted to ask if anybody has any questions, or if anybody from the team wants to say any last comments.
I'll jump in real quick. This is Jason. I just wanted to say thank you to Carolina, Anna, and Connie for the most excellent work and presentation here today. Well done. And as always, you have represented the Center for Emergency Medical Services extremely well. So thank you.
Questions? Able to make a slide right now. All right. Any questions from anyone? All right, I'll pass it back to Jennifer.
All right, thank you guys so much. We will be back after the holiday, so I think it's the Thursday of next week. So thank you guys for giving your presentation. It was really great, and I'm sure the students who are on and who will watch this in the future on the recording will learn a lot. So thank you.